Thank you very much. Steve Unwin, I'm from I'm also the Southwest Regional Organiser. So I cover half of the area that we are here today, because this is the Southeast and the Southwest Conference. Now, on the 2nd of May, 2nd of May coming up, we have a vast range of local elections across England in particular. Now, here in the Southeast and the Southwest, so in the southern regions, there are, I've checked it, 915 local council seats up for election, excluding any by-elections. So we have elections coming up very, very soon. And indeed, the notice of those elections were published on Monday this week. So the elections are already started. People have probably already put in nomination papers. And we need to get our candidates in place and nominated, ready for those local elections. Now, when I say we've got 915 lots of local elections, we have elections in virtually every nook and cranny of the southern regions. We've got them as well, all across the northern and the Midlands as well. So there are thousands of elections coming up on the 2nd of May. And for example, here in Winchester, we've got local elections on that day. In 10 of the districts of Hampshire, we have local elections, including the big places like Southampton and Portsmouth and Gosport and all the rural areas as well. So we have elections there. We've got them across Surrey and Sussex. We've got them in across Gloucestershire. We've got them in Oxford. We've got them in Bristol. We've got them in Dorset. You know, more or less in most of the areas that many of the people here today have come from. We have elections either on your doorstep or next door to you. So we do need to really get our candidates nominated. The deadline for nominations, they're already open now. So they've been accepting nominations for a week, but the deadline for nominations is 4 p.m. on Friday, the 5th of April. So that's in 20 days from today. So we've really got to be in election mode. The other factor is, I know that Rishi Sunak recently said, oh, we won't be having a general election on the 2nd of May. But the reality is we will have a general election when the Conservatives think they have the best chance of damage limitation, I suspect. And if it looks to them like going early and going very quickly, they'll do that. And they can still do that even for the 2nd of May. So although it is probably unlikely, nevertheless, all they would need to do is to dissolve Parliament 25 working days before the polling day. So that would mean that it could be any time up to the 28th of March, which is 25 days before the 2nd of May. That's working days, that's excluding weekends. That's a dozen days from today. So any time over the next 12 days, they could call a general election, and we've got to be prepared for that, because it's always a possibility. And even if it doesn't happen, that's how tight the timetable is for any general election. Whenever Parliament is dissolved, it's 25 days before, working days before polling day, and that can happen at any time. Now, in the event of a general election, the delivery of so for example, if it is on the 2nd of May, we'd have to have £500 deposits. We'd have to have nomination forms all completed and handed in on the same day as the deadline for the local council elections. So 4 p.m. on a Friday, the 5th of April. So that's the sort of timetable that we're talking about. Now, yes, they sometimes talk about a snap general election. They're always a snap general election, as I mentioned before, because it is a very short timetable. The only difference is sometimes something like the 2nd of May is a known date, and it's always one that one can potentially plan for. Other dates are quite often in October, but the last general election was in December in 2019. And we know as an absolute fact that the Brexit Party, a lot of us had stood down in favour of the Brexit Party because they were sort of the only game in town at that time. For example, and I know in North Dorset, we basically stood back in favour of the Brexit Party candidate so as not to split the vote, etc., etc. But the people in charge of the Brexit Party, which, as was mentioned right at the beginning, is not a democratic organisation. They don't have members in the same way that we do. They were instructed to withdraw all their candidates in every seat, such as this one, such as Winchester, where the so-called Conservative MP had the whip withdrawn as a Brexit rebel. And that was and then he had it restored just before the general election. They pulled out even in seats like that, where you have people who are undermining the Brexit campaign for their entire political lives. And the Brexit Party stood down there. There was no logic to it. There was no common sense. They were clearly caught with their pants down. They were not able to field 650 candidates basically in 12 days, which is what it would have required. And right at the last minute, they withdrew all their candidates in most of the areas of the southeast and most of the areas of the southwest. As you all know, because I know for a start, the first time in my life, I'd actually spoilt my ballot paper. I couldn't vote for the Conservative, pro-EU, lefty, pinko-subversive MP that we had. And I obviously wouldn't vote Labour or Liberal Democrat or Green. So the first time in my life, I wrote, I cartooned a UKIP thing, could have put something ruder, I suppose, and spoilt my ballot paper. And I know lots of people who basically did that. Now, although they've rebranded now as Reform, I think it's called. Not sure what they want to reform, but that's another matter. All that's happened is they've swapped hats. Farage is no longer the leader, he's the president, and Tice is no longer the chairman, he's the leader. So it's the same people running it, wearing the same probably unwashed pants that were found around their ankles in 2019. And they are in charge this time. I don't trust them if someone shows you what they're like, then you better believe them. And I don't trust them to field candidates everywhere. We've got to be in a much more organised position to field candidates in far more places. Now, our current strategy is that we have a number of candidates in place. We've got the funding in place, but we're only covering a certain number of highly targeted constituencies. And we are targeting constituencies in a logical way that are the types of constituencies that we've traditionally always done well in. And we need to rally our supporters in our strong areas because they've been abandoned. They were abandoned by the Brexit Party a long time ago, and they've been sort of forgotten about. We need to rally our troops. Now, we also need people to come forward to stand as candidates, to put their names down as candidates. Now, for the local elections, life is a lot easier because under 2022 changes to the regulations, you no longer have to get 10 signatures on your nomination paper. You only need 2. So even someone who's standing as a notional or a paper candidate, whatever you want to call it, a democracy candidate, sometimes perhaps you're not going to run a full campaign, but you just simply put your nomination papers in and it's a name on the ballot paper. Then it's all you need is your next door neighbour to sign your nomination paper, and your wife could sign it, and that's two signatures. So it's actually very, very easy to stand as a local council candidate. For a general election, it's still 10 signatures, not that difficult in a parliamentary constituency with 70,000 voters. Now, it may be that some of you are perhaps not able or have the inclination to stand as a parliamentary candidate, that's perfectly acceptable, but there are other ways that support can be given. Now, one clear case is we often have young candidates who are keen to stand and keen to fly the flag and speak at meetings and hustings and all the rest of it, but they need to, they perhaps will struggle to fund their campaigns. So if someone can help, maybe not stand as a candidate, but provide the £500 or a contribution towards the £500 nomination, because for a parliamentary election you need a £500 deposit, it's called, then that would be fantastic. Even better if you can help fund or help contribute towards sponsoring a candidate's election leaflets. We need to get those printed. We can actually print about 45,000 for, I think it's about just over £1,000. But then the Royal Mail in a parliamentary election, this is a part of the £500 deposit, the Royal Mail delivers it to every household in that constituency. So it's a very cost-effective way of communicating with 70,000 voters, because for the sake of a couple of £1,000, including the deposit and all the printing, every house is delivered to. So that is really well worth doing. The final thing I'd really just want to cover is that we now have an arrangement with the English Democrats. And this has been registered with the Electoral Commission, and it's called, and this now can appear on nomination papers. You can still have UK Independence Party brackets UKIP with the UKIP logo on the ballot papers, but an option for candidates is to stand as the Patriots Alliance, English Democrats and UKIP. That's what it would say on the ballot paper. So Patriots Alliance, English Democrats and UKIP. And that would appear on the ballot paper. And then you could still have the UKIP logo, or if it was an English Democrats candidate, they would have the English Democrats logo if they wish to. So this has got a number of advantages. One clear advantage is it means that we're combining forces with the English Democrats. The English Democrats have been around since, I think it's 2008, I think it is. They've been around for 22 years. We've been around for 30 years. All these new fangled parties have been around 5 minutes, I think. But it also has the advantage that we won't be standing against each other. So we would strategically make sure that we're not fielding a UKIP candidate against an English Democrat candidate. So we would work together on that. And it also has the advantage that some voters, would be more inclined, for example, to vote UKIP. Other voters might feel more English and that they're a bit annoyed with the way the special treatment of Scotland and Wales and all the rest of it. And they might be more inclined to vote English Democrats. Well, having Patriots Alliance, UKIP or English Democrats and UKIP on the ballot paper means that you're going to get the combined votes of, those types of voters will come out and vote for that candidate. So it does make sense. So just to round up really, in your area, if you've got local elections or when there is a Westminster parliamentary election, the general election, don't leave it to other people to stand for UKIP, because you're in this room and they're probably leaving it to you. Even if you can't stand, then you can actually contribute towards a candidate standing.